Okay, so great to see everyone and happy to be here. So I'm going to talk about almost a case study, a project that we have used AI for topic modeling and research classification. I'm going to basically build on all the wonderful things that Brian said and avoid talking about any technical thing, assuming all of those things are already kind of like a background information of the project like this. We have used many of the tools that I mentioned in the previous talk. I'm going to talk about what is possible using those technologies and what is actually will be the value add to the group or to the team or to the project. So kind of as an agenda, I'm going to talk about the background, a few slides about the Research Link Australia, which was an initiative, which is an initiative running by Australian Research Data Common, ARDC. We'll talk about the PEAT graph, the capability mapping. Then we will talk about the leveraging AI to identify these topics and the collaboration networks. And finally, I'm going to talk about the human in the loop AI. So a bit packed agenda, but we're going to hit this on the mark, hopefully by the time of 20 minutes. So I will go quicker on the background section and slower on the follow-up conversation when it gets to the AI components. Now, one thing as a background is that Australian Research Data Common has a program that called the Research Link Australia. It is a program, and in some sense, it is also a platform. It is aimed to create a bridge between the research and industry. And this was funded through the Australian government. The idea is lifting the capability of Australian research and industry collaboration, finding new opportunities, kind of closing the gap. And there's a number of different activities happens as part of the Research Link Australia in the Australian research ecosystem. Now, this basically addressed the problem from the different stakeholder groups. So in a research ecosystem, we have researchers who try to address the problem of how do I find my potential industry partner for the next grant? Or I have invented something amazing. How do I actually contact industry to see if there are any use cases for that? How do I actually find opportunities for contract research? In the industry side, there's always the need for access to the talent, especially when you are in a high-tech environment. The innovation part requires access to the brains of the researchers and kind of access to the kind of the minds of researchers in universities. At the same time, the policymakers want to know how this ecosystem works, where are the gaps, where we have collaboration, and when we are lacking that collaboration. And at the same time, government want to be able to kind of improve this collaboration using the tax incentives and other programs. And all of those requires insights into these collaboration points. So there's a lot of stakeholders in Australia looking at this concept of research industry collaboration. Now, there is a data portal that Australian Research Data Common runs that actually uses the data that I'm going to talk about this in a moment to make these things discoverable. And there are components here later on, we will see that use some AI tagging that enables these portals. But we're not going to talk about the portal. We're going to talk about some of the RLA or Research Link Australia projects. Specifically, there are 4 projects that was kind of like a pilot that RLA ran, and these are the engagement points where ARDC in Australia engaged different communities trying to actually identify where and how the different information systems can come together. And one of them is about the data community of practice for health and well-being. So this is a health group basically come together and they're studying the collaboration network between the research and industry. So we're going to talk about this specific group. So we're narrowing down. Now, this is a kind of collaboration between universities, 2 universities, the CRC in Australia, which is almost like a research cooperative center, brings the research and industry together, not-for-profit organization, medical research institution, and even health platform. So a hybrid structure when you have multiple partners together. Now, this group was trying to address some preliminary questions. What are the research capability each one of these partners have in-house? That means in their own group, in their own team. What is it that they are doing? What is it that is the research, we call them capacity? What is the research capacity available in the network? There are researchers or industry partners that they may not actually directly work with them, but they know people who they actually work with those kind of partners. So you can access them with 1 degree of separation or 2 degrees of separation. So there are opportunities to actually tap to those resources. And then there are other things about what makes a potential successful partnership, what makes the new partnership fruitful, what are the impact of these collaborations, and so forth. I'm going to focus on the first two, the research capacity and research capabilities. That is where the AI comes to play. So what we have done is that we use a model or concept that's called data community of practice workshops. And basically, this is based on building the collaborative enterprise. When you bring multiple different partners together, you use a data as a conduit to get them to work together. This is in the social sciences space. We have done this in a lot of different projects, from the projects looking at the energy to the socio-economic and disadvantaged community to the government policy. Basically, this is a method to have domain experts engage with the data. And then from those data sets, you derive data insights, which also we call them actionable insights. So in the case of this project, we will use the same methodology, except one of the components in this process has been using generative AI for synthesizing some of these data sets. So we had the combination of data from partners, and also we have data from ARDC. And then we have the AI kind of augmenting that process. So from the partners, we have some specific set of data sets. If some of you are familiar with scholarly networks, you probably know that these things, how they play in this ecosystem. So we had about metadata for 22,000 researchers. You can think about them all as ORCID profiles that belong to these groups. We have grants and projects. We had more than 8,000 research outputs and more than 5,000 organizations metadata records that indicate the partners who have been involved either in publications or projects to this series of projects. And in the other side, we have the data provided by the Research Link Australia, RLA. So this is user research graph meta model, which is basically the variation of persistent identifier graph. It connects, in the case of RLA, 4 main objects. Researchers mainly identified by ORCID, organizations identified by Wikidata Crossref Australian Business Registry number is a Australian specific identifier for companies, and role. And the grants has a substantial number of funding records come from ORCID, but we also had the ARC and NHMRC, which are funding organizations in Australia. Then we had the publications that come from the ORCID records, from Scopus, Crossref, PubMed, and even some from DataCite. And basically, this information has been built top of a 3-layer structure that comes from the research graph ecosystem, which is basically what it does. It connects information from different peer providers. It synthesizes the records and de-identifies some of those items and build the data in a Neo4j format. In Australia, we are optimizing these records for Australian records. And this is one of the use cases we use generative AI. Again, not the topic of this presentation, but generative AI has been used here to identify the right organization when we do the linking. And then we disseminate this data to the partners of the project. So research capability. How did we do that? Well, the first attempt was quite manual. We actually get the domain experts to put the sticker notes that explain what they think the organization is about and how does it work. It's demonstrated that it is very, very difficult. Even with a group of like 8, 9, or 6 organizations in this case, it was very difficult to come up with the understanding of what their organizations are about and what capabilities that they have and how do they want to present their outcome or the portfolio. We used the first instance, we used a generative AI to actually get a picture of everything. So in this case, if you only look at that 2,912 projects that are in this community of practice, and using the mixed role model, which is one of the open source models, we basically identified some key criteria. Now, the important thing here is this is a very abstract picture here. There's multiple different prompting involved. And the most important thing is that back into the data co-op, a lot of those meetings with the domain experts are about what kind of topics actually make sense. AI would recommend different type of classification. You can provide feedback back and forth. And the result of this conversation basically can lead you at the end to the point that the group thinks that, okay, this is a right justification of how this collective group actually can present their projects. It's almost like you want to put the books on the shelf. The question is that how many shelves do you want and what you're going to call them. So you get a different recommendations from AI, but then it is up to the group to actually have that conversation and pick the right structure. So for us, AI is mainly operate like an assistant rather than actual ultimate intelligence in that concept. Now, under each one of these main classification, this is where AI is more deterministic for us. It comes with the main classes that can fit those papers into this. The way that we implemented this is that we went through the kind of recursive model, when for every single project description, we evaluated this against individual classification, and we basically picked the highest weight that connect that article or that project connected to that topic. And if we have basically in the AI concept, there's a curve we can create that actually shows what is the overall rating of your topics compared to the articles. If you have a scenario that you see there is no strong recommendation and articles are quite loosely, or projects quite loosely get distributed across these things, that's the time that you basically reshuffle. But what we discovered is that for the sub-classification is actually the result was quite good. So we didn't actually need to do any of those corrections. Now, under the health and well-being, the projects in this group goes into the mental health, physical health, health systems, and reproductive health. Under the social services and communities, again, we go community resilience, crisis accommodation, youth and family services, and so forth. So the next component here is that they basically put these things into the visualization that actually helps these partners to actually get insights out of this project. So the data co-op process basically includes creating a lot of visualizations like this. And because of the tagging, now we can actually identify how this group actually works across different topics. And this is an interactive visualization. You can basically click on every single of these components and narrow down and filter based on that. So if I zoom in, you see across these partnerships, although we have 4 classes, but overall classification of projects shows they have this different strength on different topics. So for example, the first one, Origin, which is a medical research institute, obviously the most common kind of area of projects are health and well-being, while the digital health CRC, which is the last partner in this group, has a highest kind of allocation to technology and data science in health. So that was one of the kind of visualization of how these partners kind of can sit together around that table. The other thing is that diving into each partner to see what does it actually mean individually when we look at each group. So rather than actually putting all the grants together, for example, for Origin, we are only looking at the classification of projects for Origin only. So in this case, out of almost 200 grants, the AI comes in a different type of classification. So it doesn't go to that 4 type of classes anymore. Now it has a different nuance. It tells us that the Origin have expertise or capability around a digital and virtual intervention, innovative therapies, pharmaceutical interventions, social and environmental factors, and youth mental health. And then there is a subclasses of this one also in another level. So it's truly the actual topic.
Yeah, I know that's what you meant, but they're...
Sorry? Oh, sorry. I thought that was a question for me.
No, please mute yourself if you're not talking.
Yes. So yes, that sub-classification goes to another level of detail. And then we did the mapping around this to identify how these things actually comes together from the initial classification, and the group as collectively we work with them, they kind of confirm every single of these steps as we were doing the mapping. The other thing is that when we look at the classifications across these partners, it looks very, very different. So although all of them are in a health space, but then for MRI to the Health Research Institution to the health platform called HEAL, we, after doing this for individual groups, we get a different portfolio that describes their specific narrative. Now, we have put these things into action of studying their collaboration network
Amir,
based on
1
these,
minute, please. Your
yes, sure. Based on these criteria, so those visualization enables actually the function of basically looking and filtering of given topic, and then look at the global collaboration network on a given topic. So this was the foundation for a lot of activities we have done. Now, this is a final item to kind of mention here, that the concept of human in the loop AI here is quite important. The domain expert help us to refine our prompts that goes to their AI components. They also help us to refine the data that goes into our context and review the results. So these loops are very essential in order to actually get this kind of symbiosis between the AI and domain expert works effectively. And one thing I can say, this is this kind of photo from one of our workshops here in Melbourne, Australia. We found researchers are very, very engaged in the process, predominantly because they feel that the analysis comes out of this process reflect their expertise, and they had this opportunity to actually provide feedback and get a better result out of that. And that was one of the major lessons we learned, that there's a great value between the human and AI working together when you actually use AI for the analysis of the data.